This section, that is on perspectives in human geography, examines some of these more complicated questions and what can go on to be their possible answers. Of late, a good number of questions have started being asked from perspectives in human geography, and sometimes the students are left dumbfounded largely because of the fact that they go on to pick up one small section and then go on to bloat it in the form of a full question. Maybe also because they go on to interrelate, they go on to expect that the students will be able to interrelate some 3 or 4 different type of philosophies, and because they will be able to interrelate 3 or 4 different type of philosophies, the students do go on to find it difficult to be very, very correlative on that part. It is going to be a small effort picking up something like some 12 questions which can go on to pose some degree of a complication to the students, some of them which have been asked in the past, some of them which are going to be likely to be asked as well. The first is examine the context under which Arabian geographers gave their contribution. Why are these contributions significant? Now, we are again going to be talking about the directives of this answer. That means how is it that what are the cardinal points that we can go on to pick up as part of this answer. Now it is going to be talking about the context under which the Arabian geographers gave their contribution. Essentially it is talking about the dark ages in geography, and then after the dark ages the Arabian geographers made their contribution, and why is it that these contributions are significant. The Arabian geographers have flourished somewhere from 7th century to about 12th century AD of sorts. The contribution of Arabian geographers is considered seminal, large and significant because when the Arabian geographers went on to herald their arrival on the knowledge field, at that point of a time, geography was and knowledge was under dark ages as per the Western concept. It was not, because it was precisely at that point of a time, from 2nd century to 7th century AD, for almost 500 years or so, that India was flourishing. It was a flourishing civilization, and it was a region that was known for the entire of the South Indian kingdom and the dynasties in that place, the Chola, the Pallava, Pandyas, all of them that used to be a part of it. And India was a super naval power as well. Of course, it was a superpower. It was the only superpower in the whole of the world at that point of time. But because we go on to study everything that the Western countries have given it to us, and because we are a colony, we are a slave mentality, we have a slave mentality, we are going to follow everything that the West goes on to say. So, the answer to this question is going to be completely incorrect. But that is what is going to be significant from the perspective of writing it in the examination. So we are talking about examining the context under which Arabian geographers gave their contribution, and that was Dark Ages. Dark Ages means that it was knowledge that was in Dark Ages. And why is it that it was considered in Dark Ages? For example, the earth was considered to be at the center and that sun was surrounding it. That was one. Second was, the earth was considered to be disc-shaped rather than having a spherical shape. The third was, there was a concept of a demon living on the earth. The fourth was, there is a concept of a god living on earth. The maps were profusely decorated. The substance was not so much significant as it was the presentation of it. Like the modern day schools, where substance is not significant, but the school building is very, very good, and the teachers are not so important in those schools. So substance was not very significant in those maps, and knowledge was thought to be kept captive under the influence of the Christian dogmas. That means under the church. It was captive, and it was at the mercy of whichever way that the churches can go on to interpret this knowledge. And of course, anyone who wished to talk against the so-called concept of God, they were penalized heavily, and these penalties used to be actually lethal of sorts. So this was the context under which Arabian geographers made their contribution. What was the contribution that was so significant? The contribution was that the Arabian geographers, of course, because they were Arabian geographers living in the Arabian regions and represented by so many of them, Ibn Battuta, Ibn Khaldun, Ibn Yunus, Ibn Haql, Al-Maqdisi, Khan al-Safa, all of these, and a variety of other names were also part of it. They were these geographers. They used to move in deserts at the night time, and there was no way that they could have gauged the direction unless they started gazing at the stars. Gazing at these stars helped them develop this concept and knowledge of astronomy. That was one contribution. Second was, most of these Arabian geographers, which were Muslims, they used to be offering namaz towards Makkah. So all of them must go to be turning towards their head towards Makkah. So that helped them gaze a proper direction. The third was the Arabs wanted to expand their territory. So what they did was that they sent a different type of people in different regions. So from Arabian region, some of them were sent to India, some of them to Pakistan, some of them to Mediterranean region, some of them to African region. All of these Arabians went on to different places. They went on to converge, and what they did was that when they came with a description of the locality where they have been. So that went on to enrich geographical knowledge. Al-Biruni came to India. Ibn Battuta also was one of these persons, but he was from Morocco, Tangier from Morocco. He came to India as well. It was Al-Biruni who was largely important from the perspective of increasing this geographical knowledge. And what he did was he went on to do a lot of things on the monsoons, on Mawsum, as we're going to be calling it. That's an Arabian word, it's the Persian word, meaning some type of a seasonality, some type of a change in the seasons. And possibly it is after which that the name monsoon has derived. That is, the British went on to call it a monsoon because they possibly couldn't go to pronounce Mawsum. So the fourth was that Arabian geographers, having come in contact with India, they went on to translate a good amount of work of India. And of course, India was a knowledge superpower at that point of a time. The fifth was that they translated a good amount of work and they prepared a variety of type of dictionaries as well. The seventh was that they went on to have a correct determination of the latitude and the longitude. They were the one who went on to take a deep interest in the mathematical geography that was prevalent at that point of a time. Then the Arabian geographers were the one who went on to be in contact with different type of civilizations and went on to incorporate as many things as would have been possible from these civilizations. It was these Arabian geographers who were field geographers, that means who went in different fields and they came back and they were armchair geographers as well. So in both of these ways, they were responsible for developing the knowledge component of geography. That was the greatest contribution that the Arabian geographers went on to make. Supposing that Arabian geographers wouldn't have made this contribution, then who knows, there still would have been certain things that would have been dark ages of sorts. So what they did was that for the Western world, they removed that layer of darkness in terms of knowledge, and the Christian community doesn't going to be having a problem in acknowledging it, but because the British had a deep hatred towards India, they are never going to be acknowledging this fact. They have never acknowledged it as well, and despite the fact that India was a knowledge superpower in this case. Now, this is what exactly has been the overall treatise with respect to knowledge, with respect to acceptance of certain things, because that will go on to elevate India in the eyes of the world. But this is something that you don't have to write. That is what this answer has been. Second question. The boundaries of the regions are more perceived than actually determined quantitatively. Give arguments in favor and against of your answer. The meaning of this question is that we are going to be talking about the boundaries of the regions are more perceived. That means you perceive these boundaries rather than you can go on to determine these boundaries quantitatively. And when we go on to be talking about its determination quantitatively, that means we are talking about mathematical approach towards geography. We are talking about quantitative revolution. We are talking about the boundaries of the regions are more perceived. Now this is what we have to prove, and this is what we say that is correct, it is not correct. So the concept is region. What is a region? A region is a homogeneous area in relation to a selected criteria. The moment the criteria goes into change, the regions also go into change. If the criteria is physiography, then India goes into comprise of 3 regions: Himalayas, Peninsula, and the plains, maybe the coastal plains, maybe the islands, to add 2 more of them. Second is, that is, if we are going to change this criteria to language, now there is no Himalayas. That is, it can be Hindi speaking belt, it can be Telugu speaking belt, it can be Bengali speaking belt, and so on. The boundaries will change. If it is that we go on to change this criteria further about economic growth, and then again the whole thing goes on to change. Then the fourth is, if we again go on to bring about certain type of change in the criteria as about the caste equation in the country, that is the caste composition, again these boundaries will go on to change. So you have different type of boundaries. Is it that these boundaries can be quantitatively determined? They can be determined. And how is it that can be determined? One of them is by using some quantitative methods, like some of them can be multivariate analysis, one of them can be Thyssen polygons, the third can go on to be the gravity model, use of the gravity model. The fourth can go on to be the law of radial gravitation. The fifth can go on to be the breaking point concept. The sixth can go on to be a variety of it. Now when these boundaries are going to be determined quantitatively, then there is a very sharp, razor sharp boundary up till which there is one influence, and beyond which there is another influence. That means there is a razor sharp boundary up till which there is one influence, and beyond that the influence goes on to change. Is it that the Himalayas is going to end in one place and then abruptly the plains start? Answer is no. Is it that the Hindi speaking people go on to limit themselves within a razor sharp boundary and then beyond which the Bengali speaking people start? Answer is no. But that is the basic merit of determining the boundaries quantitatively. Boundaries can never be determined quantitatively, and if they are determined quantitatively, they will go on to leave it with a lot of flaws, because it's never that up till a point there is one characteristic that is dominant, and beyond that there is another characteristic that goes on to become dominant. So the best way is that it has to be a humanistic method. It is more perceived. For example, if it is that the boundary happens to be drawn between languages, then where exactly Hindi belt ends and from where the Bengali language starts, it's not exactly about a razor sharp boundary. It is going to be a much more broader boundary in this case, and that is going to be a broader region. It's a transitional zone. Transitional zone in the sense that it is going to be, there will be some place where there will be Hindi speaking people and little Bengali speaking people. Then the Bengali will increase, then it will go to increase, then it will go to increase further, and then in one of these cases there will be a preponderance of Bengali speaking people, less number of Hindi speaking people, and then it will be completely dominated perhaps by Bengali speaking. So it's perceived. This is another of this boundary. Take an example, we are talking about cities as the boundary. So where exactly is it that Delhi goes into end? Can it be a razor sharp boundary? Answer is no, because it has to be perceived. It is going to be perceived. That means there will be a lot of people who will to travel from Gurgaon to Delhi, and they'll still say that they are in Delhi. There will be still some people who will keep on moving from a good number of places, and the influence of Delhi is going to be so pervasive that they will still say that they are in this region. They are going to be in Delhi. there is still going to be good number of people who will keep on saying the same thing, and then of course in this case there cannot be a razor sharp boundary as well. If you're going to say that is the influence of Delhi. So influence of Delhi, is it that it goes on to end in some place abruptly and beyond which the influence of other city goes on to start? Answer is no. Now that is what exactly the answer demanded. That is the arguments in favor and against of your answer. The third is, behavioral geography with its philosophy has made a seminal contribution to hazard management and perception. The first thing that has to explain here is what is a hazard. Hazard is a perception, and hazard is actually a reality because it is capable of damaging certain things associated with people, with humanity, with settlements, with economy. It can go on to be a perception which can go on to transform itself into a reality. Now, how is it that we happen to know that it is a hazard or it's a reality? The first is going to be, we are going to be talking about, it's going to be associated with our behavioral component. Take an example, flood. Flood is a reality. Flood is a phenomena. Flood is a natural event. Flood is a regularity. Floods have taken place for so long a time on the whole of the earth. Without floods, there was no possibility that the Gangic plain would have formed. Now, floods are a reality. Is it that floods can be a hazard? Floods can be a hazard if you go to move towards a flood-affected region and start living in that territory. The moment you're going to start living in that territory, it goes on to become a hazard. So it's not that the river has created that hazard, it's that you have created a hazard for yourself. Behavioral geography helps us to understand that because it says that it is the perception that allows you to use some of these type of words. Second is, take the case of the Mississippi region. Mississippi region, people going to climb trees because flooding is an annual event in that region. They wait for 7 days, 8 days, then they're going to come back. They're going to move themselves to a safer locality, thinking that flood is in any case going to be a natural phenomena. So when they go on to descend down and when they're going to settle themselves once again, then they rejoice because the floods have created a layer of a very, very fertile soil over the entire of the region. So for them, despite the fact that the floods going to take place, it's not a hazard because they have got themselves adapted. It's not a perception. Hazard in that case is not going to be a perception at all. Now that is the concept of hazard and that is the concept of reality. That's the concept of a perception, that is the concept of a reality. How is it that behavioral geography has made certain contribution? It is behavioral geography which understands the phenomena from the perspective of an individual. It understands it from the perspective of not only an individual, from the perspective of an entire of the region, from the perspective of a community, that it is able to distinguish between these type of words. So that is what we're going to be calling it as behavioral geography. So behavioral geography is banking upon two concepts, behaviorism and behavioralism. Of course, both of them are not going to be significant in, at least in this case, despite the fact they are part of it. Behavioral geography is understanding the phenomena from the perspective of the perception of a person who goes on to be in the throes of certain type of a event or a problem and so on. So it can go on to be a perception, it can go on to be reality, it can go on to be nothing but an event, depending on how the person goes on to perceive. So in Bhagalpur, Diara region, no one goes on to perceive it as a hazard. But some people who go on to live in the beds of Kosi, they always go on to get affected by floods. But then these people go on to be actually living on the beds of the Kosi river. They are the one. So it's not the fault of the river in this case at all. It's the fault of the people who have moved towards this region. Then we are taking examples of the Gangic plain. In good number of places, let's say in Punjab and Haryana, the rivers have been embanked to such an extent that there is no chance of a flooding taking place unless it goes on to be a real hazard of sorts. So the Dal Lake went on to get flooded, and that was responsible for flooding the whole of the season. It was largely because of the fault of the people. It was not a hazard, it was the people who created a hazard for themselves. Now all of this understanding is helped by behavioral geography. That is question number 3. Question number 4 is, discuss critically how environmentalism as a paradigm reflects itself in its present thinking. There are 3 parts of the question. The first is, what is environmentalism? Now, environmentalism is a paradigm. It's a paradigm that is associated with certain things. For example, it is associated with certain aspects like that of how is it that the environment goes on to affect the life of a human being? How is it that the environment goes on to affect the people? How is it that it goes on to play a pervasive role in the way people go on to think, the way people go on to behave, and whichever way that is possible? That is environmentalism. Environmentalism was a paradigm. Paradigm, that means geography at one point of time was said to be and considered to be one of those sciences which studied the impact of environment on human beings. This is how geography was called as, and this is how geography has been. So geography has been one of those sciences which studies the impact of environment on human being. That went on to become one paradigm. It was a phase in which geography used to be defined in such a manner. Then there was another phase in which geography was defined in another manner. That is a possibilism. That is the impact of human being on the environment. Then there was a third one, that was regional concept, and so on and so forth. So it was one of those paradigms. So this paradigm, there had been a lot of paradigmatic shifts that have taken place in the subject. For example, the first paradigm ever was environmentalism, environmental determinism. Second was environmental possibilism. The third was going to be regional concept. The fourth was going to be quantitative approach. The fifth was the behavioral revolution. The sixth has been welfare approaches. Seventh has been radical approaches, phenomenology, and so on. So geography underwent through different phases, and in all the phases, geography has been defined in a completely different manner. Now that's what we're going to be talking about, that geography has been defined in a completely different manner. Now, is it that environmentalism as a paradigm is still relevant? The answer is yes, it is still relevant. And what are the syndications and what are the things? The first is that we have started expressing more and more concern about our environment and the effect that environment can go on global warming. There is more and more amount of a talk going on as to how global warming may have affected the hurricane Harvey. There is more and more amount of a talk going on as to how environment, if it goes on to get degraded, can go on to affect the extinction of the human civilization. There is not only a talk, we have completely named one of the geological era as Anthropocene, largely because the impact of environmentalism has been so pervasive, impact of human beings have been so pervasive in this case. That is, again considering that it has been environment which is more important for us and that we cannot afford to damage our environment the way that we can go on to do. It is environment that is, we have agreed and we have started realizing that it is environment that affects the morphology of the human beings. That is, the hair color, the nose form, the face, the stature of the people. And it is again environment, if we are going to be not taking care of our environment, we are going to be regularly ravaged by floods, droughts, and so on. The bare fact that there have been many international organizations who have been associated with the environmental movement, environmental thinking, like Greenpeace, like the Green Party, and so on. And like all of these countries are shifting themselves into green economy, that it speaks volumes about the impact environment can go on to have on the human beings. That is number 3. Number 4. Number 5 is trace the changing paradigms in geography. Now, since the answer is about trace the changing paradigms in geography, the candidate in this case has to write something about each one of them. The answer has to begin first by talking about what is a paradigm. A paradigm goes on to reflect a phase of a thinking that is prevailing in the subject. It is a phase of thinking in the subject that defines what the subject is. It's a phase of thinking that defines how the subject goes on to behave. It's a phase of thinking that determines the nature of the subject as well. So, every subject is going to pass through different phases, because there is one phase and then there are a lot of thinkers in that phase. Then there is another thinker that comes up that goes on to demolish that phase and that thinking, and then another phase starts. And then another phase starts, and then another phase starts. And that is how we are able to enrich our knowledge. So geography is also enriched the knowledge in this case. One of these first phases that had always existed in this case had been that of environmentalism. Now, the concept of environmentalism is that environment has a prime role to play in shaping the mankind, in shaping the future of the mankind, in shaping how exactly the human beings going to behave. That was one phase. Environmentalism comprised determinism. That means the environment has an effect to such an extent that whichever way the environment is, the human beings are a replica of it. There is an inevitability of the occurrence of some set of events based on some cause, and the cause in this case is going to be environment. Now that cause of environment goes on to be reflecting itself in a variety of forms which different geographers talked about. For example, some talked about that people who are living in cold regions are courageous, people who are living in tropical regions are timid. Some people talked about that the people going to be having half closed eyes like that only because of the fact that there are numerous flies flying around their eyes. Now, they were referring to the presence of the epicanthic fold in the Mongolid group of people. That phase was substituted by environmental possibilism, because some people thought that there is too much amount of a talk going about that environment affects human being. They started giving example that, see, we have changed the environment. They started referring to industrial revolution. So they said that we have changed this environment. So this phase changed to environmental possibilism. They said that it is the environment, it is nature that goes on to give many different type of possibilities, and it is up to human beings to choose these type of possibilities. Then the third phase was going to be associated with a regional concept. Now some people started arguing this. They said that it is environment that affects the human being, it's the human being that going to affect the environment. It is neither the environment that affects the human being, it's neither the people that going to affect the environment. Actually, it is a fusion. That is, it is the environment that goes on to affect human beings, and human beings also affect it. And the place where they're going to fuse, the place where they're going to merge, that is a place that is going to be called as a region. So a region is unique because every region goes on to show a fusion of a man-environment relationship in the most unique, exceptional manner. So a region was unique, a region was exceptional, and this concept came to be known as regional concept. And because regional concept studied all of these areas that were differential, that were differentiated, that means which has a different type of a meaning, all of these areas that were different from each other. So this concept and paradigm came to be known as areal differentiation. Now this gave so the geographers went on to be very, very happy. They said that geography is unique, exceptional, and everything, because geography studies unique things. And what are these unique things? These unique things are going to be regions. Immediately an article was published that went on to destroy that notion that geography was exceptional. He said that merely calling itself as an exceptional science is not going to take geography to anywhere. Geography must go on to prepare laws, theories and models and prove a phenomena 100 times, million times in order to call itself as a science. Otherwise, merely calling that we are unique will not going to take it anywhere at all. So that started and ushered in a revolution of sorts that was quantitative revolution. So people started borrowing concepts from mathematics and physics and started applying it on geography. So that ushered in a new revolution of sorts that was called as a quantitative revolution. So everything can be quantified. Can the human emotions be quantified? Can the behavior of a person be quantified? Can the changing nature of human beings can be quantified? Is it that the people who have 100 rupees in pocket, they go to the nearest shop to shop? Answer is no. Quantitative revolution said that people will always go on to visit the nearest shop. Why? Because people are economic. People are not economic. If it is that the person goes on to doesn't enjoy shopping in that region, he will never go. He may go to 20 kilometers away where he can go to find a very good ambience, very good people. Maybe he wants to shop along with his friend, and that will go on to give him good amount of pleasure. And it's also not necessary that he goes on to go to shopping. He goes on to make up his mind to go for shopping, and in between he goes on to change his mind and he goes on to do something else. Now these things started coming up, and people said that no, it is not that geography can be reduced to mere figures. It is the perception of the people, it's the behavior of the people, it's the way people go on to think that determines how is it that the people will go on to move in space. So movement in space is always going to be associated with this type of people. So that ushered in a new revolution that was called as behavioral revolution. Then there was another of this revolution that came up. While behavioral revolution was going on, people started questioning, that is, what exactly is the purpose of geography? So geography should go on to do something for the welfare of the people. And from here onwards, many approaches started picking up. Idealism was one of them, welfare approach was another of them, a radical approach was another of them, and so on. So that went on to become another paradigm. So despite the fact that we are in the last of this paradigm, still all of these paradigms have been moving on. That was question number 5. Question number 6 has been critically examining the changing perspective on the concept of areal differentiation. So what the candidate has to do is that the first thing that they have to talk about is what exactly is the concept of areal differentiation. So the concept of areal differentiation is that there is every region is going to be different. All the areas go on to differ from each other in one way or the other. This is areal differentiation. Every place on the earth is unique. Every place on the earth is exceptional. Every place on the earth is going to be of a different nature. Now that was the concept of areal differentiation. So areally, different parts of the earth are going to be different from each other. That was areal differentiation. Now, is it that different people go on to talk about different type of concepts on areal differentiation? Answer is yes. So some people call areal differentiation as regional concept, like Herbertson. Some people called it by the name of regional synthesis, like Branberry. Some people called it by the name of regional systems, that was Philbrick. Some people called it as a regional science, that was Walter Izard. Now, then it of course goes on to be different concepts here. So regional concept is a region is a homogeneous area in relation to a selected criteria. That's regional concept. Regional synthesis is that a region cannot be alone. A region has to be in association with all the other regions around. That was regional synthesis. This is what Branberry said. Regional systems, that means every region goes on to behave like that of a system. That means how is it that different components are going to be linked with each other? That is regional system. Then the fourth of this component was going to be regional science. That is, can we go on to prepare a design with respect to regional science? The answer is yes. So a region goes on to be comprising how much of area? 20,000 square kilometers. So how is it that the roads going to move? They are linear, that is mathematics. Some of these are going to be circular, that is mathematics. So, and this region also goes on to be hexagonal in shape, that is also mathematics. So it can be converted into regional science. It was done by Walter Izard, and he was one of these persons who was largely responsible for planning of this entire region that was called as the Tennessee Valley Authority. It was on the designs of the Tennessee Valley Authority that a new form came up, in this case that was called by the name of Damodar Valley Corporation in India. So, areal differentiation, that is critically examine the concept of a changing perspective on areal differentiation. Seventh has been areal differentiation forms the core theme in geography. That was in 2016. That was asked. Now, must understand it. You have to go on to begin by defining what is geography. So, despite the fact that many definitions may have been given of geography, but one of these definitions that goes on to stand apart is geography is the study of, it's the science of areal differentiation. What makes geography so different? Geography is different because geography studies phenomena in space. What makes history different? History studies phenomena in time. So, geography goes on to become a chronological science, while history goes on to become chronological science. So, both of these sciences are going to be different. One is chronological, another is chronological. Everything in geography revolves around a region. In geography, you require to study the name of the places. You don't require to study the name of the places to such an extent in anything other than geography. In geography, you require to study about most of the time that you are going to be talking about regions. So why is it that Rajasthan is different? Why is it that Bihar is different? What are the Himalayas and where exactly are they? What are the distinctive features of the Himalayas? Now, everywhere, even if it is that we are not talking about an area, inadvertently we go on to be talking about different type of areas and how is it that these areas are going to be different from each other. That is what we are going to talk about. It's a theme in geography. Pick up another part. Even if we go on to go for the quantification of the subject, conversion of the concepts in mathematics, still region is going to be the most important part. And because we have converted the regions into mathematics, that's what we're going to be calling it by the name of spatial analysis. Geography is a spatial science because it studies phenomena in space, it doesn't study phenomena in time. Even if you're going to consider about behavioral evolution, you're also going to study, that is, how is it that a region is perceived? Is it that region exists? Answer is no. A region is a selected criteria. A region is a homogeneous area in relation to its selected criteria. What is the criteria that we're going to suggest and we pick up? That depends on our perception. Now, that is psychology. That is behavioral approach. So, it is our behavior, it is our perception that determines which region is a region, which region is not a region of sorts. So, because everything goes on to revolve itself around the region, around exceptional objects, that is a region, around the differentiation of the area, around space, that is why it goes on to form the core theme in geography. That goes on to bring us on to question number 8. That is, elaborate the idea of compage. The idea of compage is the same as the idea of Ganzit, the idea of an ensemble. That is, you don't go on to see any phenomena in space in a segmented manner at all. You see it only in a holistic manner. That's what is going to be called as compage. For example, when you're going to see a person, you're going to like a person. And why is it that you're going to like a person? Because you're going to see the person holistically. Not exactly. You're going to see his hands differently, his legs differently, and his other components differently. Because you do go on to take a look at his eyes, at his head, at his expression, at his lips, his smile, his entire body language in a holistic manner. You go on to be taking a look at the person as a whole. It is this whole that is called as region. It is this whole that is called as compage in one language. It's called as ensemble in French. It's called as Ganzit in Germany. Compage is the concept that is you don't go on to consider a region completely in an isolated manner. When you go to consider region, you're going to consider it taking into account the whole of this interrelationship and the entire of the interrelationship that exists between these different objects. And it is this interrelationship, it is this interplay of interrelationship that allows you to perceive the whole of the region as a region. That is compage. And this is the concept of concept, that you don't go on to, every region is different because you're going to perceive it differently. Every region is a compage, by and large. This is what exactly the concept of compage was. That brings us to number 9. There is rejuvenation of environmentalism as a paradigm in geographical studies. Comment. Now this is how exactly that we have talked about discuss critically how environmentalism as a paradigm reflects itself in present thinking. The concept is, in this case, in short, environmentalism as a paradigm has again recurred. Why it has recurred? Because of the fact that environment is affecting us badly, our health, our mindset, our activities, our work, our worries, our future. Everything hinges on environment. That is what is environmentalism. And we are talking about that is, it's a rejuvenation of this paradigm. Now, some time back, we used to be arrogant enough to consider that, well, we can go on to create the oceans are going to be so large that even if you're going to keep on polluting it for 2000 years, nothing will happen. Now, we know now that we are really capable of damaging the ocean. We now know that we are really capable of damaging the atmosphere. We know that we are really capable of damaging the environment. Just consider that is the Maharaja of Sarguja in Chhattisgarh single-handedly had been responsible for the extinction of the tigers in the country. Single-handedly he was able to do it. Now, that has allowed us to consider that now that environment was supreme and that environment must go on to take a prime place. So people go on to move in a serene area. They like to go on to move in a nice environmental condition. Most of these people do consider that they to eat healthy, and they can go to eat healthy only when the environment is healthy. And that is a new thinking that has started developing. This is what has led to the rejuvenation of environmentalism as a paradigm in geographical studies. It's a comment, so you say that yes, that's correct. 10th is, discuss the relevance of stop and go determinism in the present day context. What you have to do is that first is you have to talk about what exactly is stop and go determinism. Stop and go determinism is that is environment acts as a traffic police. So sometimes it allows you to move faster, sometimes it holds you, sometimes it allows you to choose between different things, sometimes it constricts your choice. Sometimes it allows you to move far ahead, sometimes it doesn't. That means environment acts like that of a traffic police. It goes on to regulate your actions. And this concept that it goes on to regulate your actions for the first time was enunciated by Griffith Taylor. That was in Australia where he enunciated that. Now, the topic is going to be, having talked about what exactly is stop and go determinism, is it that relevant in the present day context? Answer is yes. Largely because, can you go on to construct roads freely in Tibetan region, in Ladakh? Answer is no, because environment goes on to be a limit. Can you go on to build a house on the coast and go on to think it will not be ravaged by waves? Answer is no, because the waves are going to be stronger in that region. Can you go on to keep on damaging your environment and still think that the environment will not go on to have its repercussions on you? Answer is no, environment will have it. Can you keep on thinking that we'll go keep on emitting a lot of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere and still go on to think that the so-called global warming will not take place? Answer, it will going to take place. It will going to bring about a change in the temperature conditions. Can you think that indeed it will go on to happen that you keep on damaging the soil, keep on abusing it, and the soil will not going to take its reprisal? The answer, it will take a reprisal. Ask the people of Punjab and Haryana and Western Uttar Pradesh, where the productivity of the soil has decreased. Can you going to think that will keep on killing organisms and keep on killing wildlife and you will remain unaffected by that? And ask it that we have done it so, and we are being affected in a very adverse manner. Can we think that we can go to kill a dodo and nothing will happen to us? We have killed dodo and something is going to happen to it, because the tree on which it was dependent on was Calvaria major, and that is affected, and that has affected the human beings as well. Now that is where exactly its applicability lies. That was the concept of relevance of stop and go determinism. 11th is, what is meant by quantitative revolution in geography? Discuss its impact on the development of the subject. The quantitative revolution has been defined in a very compact manner. That is, the gradual transformation of the spirit and purpose of geography, which allowed geography to undergo through a gradual transformation, replacing an earlier ideographic concern with areal differentiation by a nomothetic search for models of a spatial structure, has been called as quantitative revolution. Now understand it, we're going to break this part. Anglo-American geography underwent, that means only Britain and North America underwent. When? That was in 1950s and 60s. And what was the transformation it underwent? It replaced an earlier ideographic concern with areal differentiation. Ideographic concern is associated with everything that has to do with regions, everything that has to do with a landscape. So, region, landscape, everything that has to do with it. So that was an ideographic concern. It was replaced an earlier ideographic concern. That was, regional concept was replaced by a nomothetic search for models of a spatial structure. Nomothetic, that means an approach that is concerned with a construction of laws, theories and models. So a concept that was based on regional concept, areal differentiation, was replaced by construction of laws, theories and models. Models of what? Of a space. That means a spatial structure. How is it that a space can be quantified, and how is it that it can be converted into mathematics? That is what has been called as quantitative revolution. So what is meant by quantitative revolution? Discuss its impact on the development of the subject. Quantitative revolution was, the second part has been developed, its impact on the subject. The quantitative revolution was a paradigm. It was one of these phase changes that took place in geography. As a part of this paradigm, what happened was, that is, the regional concept was replaced with a attendant emphasis that was in model building and so on. One of its impact was that a lot of non-geographers started making their impact on geography. So, physicists came into geography, mathematicians came in geography. That was one part. Second was, it led to the simplification of the space. For example, everything was considered to be flat, featureless. That means it was assumed that everything was flat and featureless, that all the people had the same income, that is, the population was uniformly distributed. There was one form of transportation. There was the transportation costs were decreasing or increasing proportionately with the distance. So that was simplified. The third impact was that the whole of a space was converted into geometry. For example, William Bungay was one who said that geography is the study of a space. Geometry is the description of a space. And how geometry goes on to describe a space? Geometry describes space in a manner like that is, you're going to describe a road, so road is straight. You're going to describe a road, again that is going to be circular. Or there is a sector that is going to be rectangular. Now, the use of these words hexagon, the use of the word polygonal, the use of the word linear, the use of the word square, the use of the word round is going to be all a description of geometry. So, the best way by way of which geography is going to be explained is going to be in this manner. That is, it is going to be in such a manner like that it is a geography that goes on to study space, and geometry is the description of a space, so geometry is the language of geography. The fourth has been, there has been attendant mathematization of the discipline. So a lot of models have started developing in geography which explain the phenomena like gravity model, center of gravity model, law of radial gravitation, breaking point theory, etc., etc. And to such an extent, some people started using some very complex mathematical techniques also to explain some phenomena like Markov chain model, or what Thorsten Hagestad did on Monte Carlo simulation and diffusion of innovations. It was a supra-complex mathematical technique that was developed for the purpose of explaining how is it that people can go to diffuse certain things in space. Then there was computerization of the discipline as well. How is it that this entire of discipline started getting itself computerized, the use of mathematical models in this case, and that went on to take place to such an extent that it went on to become unadaptive and unevolutionary as well. That has been its impact on the development of the subject. That is question number 11. Question number 13 has been, how does the evolution and process of development of languages is related to perception? Explain with examples. It's essentially simple. I mean, we're only going to give you a trick, not exactly the answer of it in such a manner, but that will going to help you. Language is a means of communication. And when you go, and there are many aspects of language, that is dialect is going to be one of them, pidgins are going to be another of them, Creole is going to be another of them. That is a part of language. Every language goes on to evolve in relation to the type of perception that the people go on to have about their experiences and about their environment. Now, you will start taking examples. For example, Eskimo may have seen the color of ice to be different, so his perception of blue is going to be completely different from the perception of blue that a person can go on to have in Congo Basin. That's one. Second is people who are always trying to manipulate certain things, people who are always trying to bring out certain things, try to somehow force certain things in one way or the other, they will go on to develop language, and they have developed it as well, jugaad. Okay, the third is, that is the type of marriages that go on to take place that goes on to be completely different in different parts of the world. So some places marriage is going to be something that is very pure. In some places it's a marriage of convenience. So you're going to get married once, going to get married to books, going to get married to your profession, going to go married to a passion. Sometimes people do go on to get married to their girls as well. Now that is because of the different type of societies. Now the fourth part is there is a different type of geographical conditions that help you develop different type of perceptions, and accordingly the language goes on to develop. For example, there is a hazard has not been considered to be a hazard at all in India. It has been considered to be a phase of change, and it is on this basis that Katyayani and other things go on to be. It's a temple, Adya Katyayani, that is going to be a temple, and it goes on to bank on this assumption that is hazards, not hazards, they must go to take place once in maybe 10, 15, 30, 100, maybe thousands of years, because all the sins are washed, everything is washed. Maybe if some of you go on to know that as well, there is some of these poetries, super poetries have been written with this type of a theme, and one of them has been like Mahabharata, one has been Kamayani as well in Hindi, and that goes on to, if anyone can go on to understand it, it goes on to begin by saying that is everything that has been in form of a hazard is something that is God given. It's not a hazard, it's something of phenomena to relish, and it goes on to begin by saying, हिमगिरी के उतुंग शिखर पर बैठ शिला की शीतल छां, एक पुरुष भीगे नैनों से देख रहा था प्रलय प्रवाह। एक तरल था, एक सघन, एक तत्व की ही प्रधानता, कहो इसे जड़ या चेतन। Now that is what he is talking about, a hazard. That has not been so. So we have been educated enough on that count. Take an example of how is it that in Meghdutam, Kalidas went on to explain the concept of clouds and atmospheric phenomena as well. That has also been there. So and so on, so forth. So it's the type of words that you're going to be using it. For example, the type of words that a British can go on to use, the same meaning will not go on to be there at all. A lot of words that we're going to be having in Hindi, a lot of words that is an anglicized meaning of Hindi, doesn't going to convey the same meaning with any other type of use of the word anywhere else. So language is going to be dependent upon perception, and the perception goes on to determine the language of the people as well. 14th is, that's the last one, secularization is the ultimate state of economic development of the country. Now, one must understand the topic is not secularism, it's secularization. Now, secularization is a process of a feeling of independence of the people, of the mindset, removed from all the worldly things. That means when you are feeling independent of thinking, then you are able to differentiate your emotions. So, you may go to like someone, you may go to love someone, you may go to admire someone, you may go on to respect someone. All of these words go on to have a different meaning. And with the same person, you can go on to have all the 4 type of relationship as well. Now, that means that if you are able to have 5 different type of relationship with a person in 5 different phases, that means you are going to be having an independence of thinking that is removed from all the worldly things. That means you have undergone through the process of secularization. This is one example. This another example can go on to be, that is take the case of education. Now, in case of education, you know the difference between education and literacy and so on. Even in education, you know the difference of the words that go on to be. A coach is different, a trainer is different, a teacher is different, and the ultimate of all is going to be, above everyone, is going to be a mentor. Now, a coach goes on to look for you, he goes on to take you, and he goes on to help you to understand that how exactly that certain things are missing in you, and how is it that you can go on to take care of it. A teacher will go on to teach you a chapter. A trainer will go on to train you to make you perfect. A counselor will go on to help bring out the best in you. But a mentor will go on to chisel you. He will go on to he will go on to admire you. He will go on to love you. He will not go on to be your mentor unless you have deposited yourself in front of him. Now, this differentiation is also going to be part of secularization process. So, populations which undergo through the phase of secularization, these are the populations who are going to be very forward-looking, who are very clear in their aim, who are always loving, who don't go on to harm people, who are never ever regressive in their form, who are in a position to feel their independence, who are able to innovate, who are the people who can go on to be filled with passion. It is they are completely passion driven as well in this case, and it is this passion driven form that goes on to drive all of these people. Now, whenever a country's population go on to be undergoing through this process of secularization, and they have sorted themselves out, they have a very high degree of a self-understanding of themselves, they know their strengths, they know their weakness. Not everyone is appearing for civil services because they want to appear. So a good number of people will go on to do something else. That is a matter of self-understanding and a matter of how is it that the people have undergone through the process of secularization. That is, how is it that the people can go on to perceive certain things and go on to separate their perception from reality. How is it that they can go to innovate because they are feeling completely independent? How is it that they, even in a crowd, they can go on to be alone? And how is it that even being alone, they go on to be crowded by so many amount of thoughts? Is all about the process of secularization. and any country's population that has undergone through it is bound to bring a lot of development to that country, to that nation, if that is a nation, and to that society. There is no way a society can go into progress without secularization. India was secularized in a lot of its aspects, and that is one of the indications and one of the reasons why Indians went on to build the temple of Khajuraho. That is, imagine that something that is still go on to be, Americans cannot always also go to dream of it, and even if they have done it, they have done it by way of pornographic, and that is so vulgar. Indians have made it aesthetically so pleasing that it is going to be almost godlike. It's a completely heavenly experience to be in that region and imagining that this is how exactly human beings can go on to do for the purpose of being close to God. That country is bound to be developed. That was all on perspectives in human geography.